All right, everyone. So again, Rogelio, Vida Property CXP Realty, and this time we're having a conversation with Isaac Contreras out of Saint Paul, Minnesota. Okay, CEO and founder CML Group, Keller Williams, and who's a buddy through the NARIP Familia organization. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but let's welcome in Isaac.
Hola, ¿cómo están? Nice to meet
Muy
you all.
bien. Hey, Isaac, wait, man. First of all, thank you for doing this. It's just
Yeah.
a conversation of kind of what's it like, one as an agent, right, doing business in another town, another city, another state.
Yep.
And then the other thing is from the public and somebody who's just wondering, man, I got familia that says that they're doing pretty good since they moved up there. And others that may say, hey, Denver, I heard some things as well.
Yeah.
First of all, I think the impression is that it's cold. People think it's cold in Colorado. I think it's obviously cold in Minnesota. I think that's the first thing right away. But once you get past that, let's talk a little bit. What do you think about, both, let's say with NARIP, what are things, what are we seeing in each of our respective markets?
Yeah.
And what do we see coming? And why would people move to Minnesota, or why would people move to Denver from Minnesota?
Yeah.
So first of all, tell me just yourself, man. You've been in the business for a while. You just always been in real estate. You've done some other things.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I'm a Minnesota guy, born and raised. Grew up in Minnesota, in the Saint Paul area on the west side of Saint Paul. That I say specifically because that neighborhood there is the oldest Latino neighborhood in the state of Minnesota. There's generations and generations there.
What is that neighborhood called?
The west side.
Like it looks like every city in the country has a west side.
Right. That's exactly right. And that's where we settled, right? My great grandpa moved over there, and that's just where him and my great grandma started there in La Familia, and now we're on the third and fourth. Shoot, now I think about fifth generation there, Yeah, we're pretty established in that neighborhood. When we find out somebody from the familia is moving out, it's strange.
Why? Like, why are you doing that?
What do you mean you're leaving?
Yeah. Well, so first, I mean, that says everything about you kind of being familiar with what has happened.
Yeah.
For a long time in that part of Minnesota, and in the real estate, how did that come along?
It's going, it's a challenging environment right now. There's some things that people haven't seen as far as being an agent, right? There's some things that people haven't seen in 30 years as far as the level of the market, the level of sales in the market. Unless you've been in this business for 30 years, you're not seeing this number of sales, this low number of sales since then.
Yeah. At the same time, a lot of agents that dropped off from the industry. I see. So definitely this was one of those challenging years across the board.
Yeah, thinning of the herd. When the sales go up that you saw from 20, 21, 22, these record number of sales, you always see the number of agents chasing those sales. And then when they drop the way they have year over year for the last 3 years, those agents start coming out. So everything that I look at, I see either a stabilization. I saw a Zillow report just last week talking about the Minneapolis Saint Paul market. As far as number of sales, it's almost going to be negligible. Even the house prices are bouncing somewhere, less than 1%. So depending on who you ask, it's going to be pretty stable. A close repeat to last year, or 2024 anyway.
Okay, and I think you may have some information to share, and I guess we'll get to that.
Yeah.
On my end, so I'm originally from Texas.
Okay.
I was born and raised, and up until 2020, I moved to Denver.
What part of Texas? That matters. I know that matters.
Oh yeah. I know it was huge, right? So Rio Grande Valley, so the southern border, and I think there might be some connections with some other people from RGV or Del Valle, people that are from down there. That's and I think that's another one where there's all sorts of El Valles across the country, right?
Yeah.
But that's where I'm from, and I haven't looked back. I moved here. I've stayed here. I haven't jumped around other than for going to school. During, Texas, I went to Michigan, so there's the connection there. So I went to engineering school in Michigan, and that's where I graduated. Went back to Texas, then here. But so I've seen it all, right? Since being in, like, when I moved here, almost right away I got into the mortgage industry. Then got my license, went through the recession, then being a housing counselor. So I went through all that. We're seeing actually an uptick right now of more foreclosures or defaults, at least.
Yeah.
That's the thing what we're seeing. But definitely the challenge, I think, was across the board in the country. The whole thing with NAR settlement.
Yeah. Lots of changes this year, man.
Yeah. So we met at Latitude for NAREP. That's the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. A couple of years ago. But I think we've been involved within NAREP as well. So you had leadership positions, right? Board of directors, being president as well.
Yeah, past president for the Twin Cities chapter.
So the same here in Denver, and now in Colorado we have two chapters. We have a Northern Colorado chapter, and then we have our original Denver chapter. We had just a regional event here last week, so we had a bunch of people from across the country.
Yeah, we sent our chapter sent seven members to Denver just last week.
Yeah, I think I talked to a few of those. Yeah. But I'm on my way out with the board. But there's always keep you in there in advisory or some committee. And I tell people, why you keep staying involved with NAREP? Look, if you're in the business, first of all, you're still active in the industry. You're still a practitioner, and some way you work with Latino consumers.
Yep.
NAREP is it. That's where you're going to get your information.
It feels right,
your
man.
Network. You're just going to end up seeing people out in the field. Might as well develop those relationships and be involved and just be part of what NAREP is all about. So there's still keeping that involvement going. Yeah. So tell me about some, like we were talking earlier offline about the migrations between Denver or Colorado and Minnesota, and I imagine people that live in metro areas tend to move to other metro areas until they're like tired of that and they want to go to rural. And I think if they do that change, they typically stay in the same state and move to a rural area of their state.
Well, I had, when you had reached out and talked about this, it was super interesting because one of the projects that I have going on that I started earlier this year is to identify, because we always had the migration patterns, right? People are moving. Latinos are known to go where the work is, stuff like that. And so we have here in Minnesota, yes, we have the freezing weather. And lots of times it's always in the top 3, worst winters, all that good stuff. My son, he spent a few years in Colorado Springs, and he would bounce between friends in Denver, friends in Colorado Springs. And he always told me about how much time he spent outside, and it was in the snow, and the streets would be cleared on their own. Just like, it's just a totally different winter than what it was that we experience here. So,
that's sunshine.
For sure.
That's the factor.
Right. So once people get here, I mean, there's a lot of things to do, but winter isn't the only thing. I like I said, I grew up in Saint Paul, born and raised. I left home to join the Navy, and after 6 years in the Navy, I came home and bought a house. Three blocks from where I grew up. So I was that guy. And right about January, February it's about the time that I always think, man, I got to find someplace else to live because it is too damn cold. It's too much snow, all that stuff like that. Yeah. But what the reason why Denver and I was interested in talking to you is because what I found out in making these connections with NAREP, building out this network for my people who are going to move out of Minnesota and where they're going to, I wanted to know who was coming to Minnesota and where are they coming from. So I did a quick Google search, and it turns out that you can do a quick Google search. I'm going to share my screen so you can see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But when I did a quick Google search of who's sending who, where, if you go to stacker.com, and it's as simple as that, states sending most people to Minnesota, right? You get a
This
list of
one, it looks
25.
dark.
Does it look
Oh,
dark?
there it is. No, not anymore. I see it.
And so
there's a number 10 for Colorado?
yeah, number 10. And so in 2022,
Mm-hmm.
Colorado sent 3,600 people, right? And then there's always the reverse here. So 3,600 people moved to Minnesota from Colorado. That means people from your market, right, moved here. And then where are we sending people, right? So like, for example, South Dakota, that's where the most people that moved to South Dakota were coming from Minnesota, right? So you and I having these kinds of conversations, so that way when you have your clients, your database saying, hey, I'm going to move to Minnesota, I need you to sell my house. Who should I talk to out there? You've got somebody that you know, somebody that's in the know, that's been in the business, because your reputation matters. And that's why I was interested in having this conversation a little bit deeper into than just saying, oh, let me do a Google search for a Minnesota agent.
So I think that conversation about working with the right agent, I think applies even people moving with the same town, right? Just from one side to the next. I mean, things could be different. And one of the things we're talking about is about the market conditions, and how at the end of the day, it really comes down to the individual situation of that person, right? Here, I think the whole thing with the conversation about inflation, right? And how, it's too expensive living here. That's been an ongoing conversation for Denver.
Yeah.
And people complaining about that and wanting to move to a place that's, without using a better word, just cheaper.
Yeah, the more affordable, right?
More affordable. Now, I think if we're good to do a deeper dive into that, then okay, well, what are wages like? What are business opportunities like? What are salaries like? If you move to a place that's considered, again, affordable, there's a reason for that. Why is the demand lower, right? Because it's really a supply and demand situation, right? So here we have the mountains, there's the diversity, there's a lot of business, wages are they pay well, unemployment rates are really low, but it is expensive.
Yeah.
But some people are willing to pay that much, and as long as people are willing to pay for those products and services that are higher, it's going to keep doing that. But it's just, I think, for me personally, it's a quality of life. Yeah. I like to go to the concerts. I like to go to the sports events. I like to escape from town and go to the mountains whenever I want to. Within the state, there's a lot of resorts all year round. So you can have vacations. A lot of people travel from other states here for vacationing. And when you're here, it's just a weekend, a day drive.
Well, and the other thing too is, it's 14 hours away, and then from Minneapolis and Denver. And then the other thing too is the MSP airport and the Denver airport. We've got the Southwest Airlines.
So it's direct flights.
It's direct flights, and you jump on there. My son was using that all the time. So, and we used it as well. That's how we did our grandkids. We put them on. We took them on their first airplane flight, and they've been talking about it. Oh, Papa, I want to go on an airplane. Want to go on an airplane. And I'm thinking, hey, I love my grandkids, but the way I was looking at it was like, okay, where can we go that we don't have to be on an airplane for 3 hours, because I don't know how they're
Yeah.
gonna, how they're going to handle 3 hours being cooped up in a metal tube 30,000 feet in the air. So we were going back and forth, and then we found some reasonable tickets to fly to Denver. And I was like, that's an easy day. We just went in one day, spent the night, and then came back out, and they were cool. They got their first flight. It was the four of us were able to fly for like $300.
If once you have a number of people together, it's at some point, the driving just makes more sense. But there's a fine line where like it's not worth it to where yes, it's worth it. And you get pretty close to that.
In the car for 14 hours with you.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me, as far as what and to be growing up, like Minnesota was a place where migrants would go to work. Summer.
Yep.
A lot of production. That was the business. But
Yeah.
but tell me, especially being Minnesotan.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say like Minnesotan.
Minnesota.
Yep.
Soda is the key.
Minnesota. The what would attract somebody to move up there? How's employment, the industry, and then this conversation? What are prices like?
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, the average price right now in the I'll say in the Twin Cities metro area sits in that 420 to 450 mark. And so for a lot of folks, that ends up being reasonable in the sense that you have a lot of options. But we have our city centers with Minneapolis, our city centers with Saint Paul. So the density of that kind of helps with the price ranges. But we've been growing big time out in our second and third ring suburbs. There's a lot of growth going on. Every time you drive through, it looks different, right?
So let's say somebody looking at metro area, what would be like entry level, 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 1,200 square feet home that's still within like a 30, 45-minute drive to town, so it's not too way out.
Yeah, I'm showing a house right now to a Marine Corps veteran later this afternoon, and it's exactly what you described. 3-bedroom, it was 2-bath, sits on just shy of a quarter acre, and it needs some updating in the sense of the cosmetic piece. But otherwise, we're looking at
habitable.
25 price range.
What was the range?
325.
325.
Yeah. 325 price.
Is there a selection at that price point?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And all of that is within 20, 25-minute drive of the downtowns. And there's a lot of there's a lot of options as far as employment. I mean, we have, if according to the NAREP reports, Minnesota is one of the top 15 states that Latinos are moving to. Some of that has to do with, 17 of the Fortune 500 companies are headquartered here in Minnesota. So we have like United Health Group, we have U.S. Bank is headquartered here, 3M is headquartered here, General Mills, Cargill, C.H. Robinson, a lot of big names are headquartered here in the Minneapolis, Saint Paul metro area. And for us, the metro area is typically a 13-county area.
Yeah, so we usually refer Twin Cities, right?
Yep.
That whole area. So 325, right? I was going to share, like on my end, just for so my MLS association that I'm associated with is Denver Metro Association of Realtors, DMAR, so we call it here. So they produce these reports, and I always tell you, like, it depends on what you include in those reports, because the stats will shift.
Yeah.
So
correct.
if you include one of the, let's say, really expensive counties, well, it's going to move the numbers, right? So this one has 11 counties So the more counties, the more it sort of levels the information out.
Yep.
So it's not too heavy of one. But, Denver County is also city and county of Denver is how they refer, here. So just looking at November stats, and I can share my screen. The median close price in November was $585, which was just under a 2% increase, so a 2% appreciation from a year ago. Yeah. And from what I hear, this is about what you're going to see in most places. There's still appreciation or staying around, but I don't know what the error, they have an error. Like if it's plus or minus a percentage, it's like now it depends on the data. It's like almost negligible. Yeah. So, but at least we're not saying negative. Now the average, and I tell people the average, there's several $1 million homes. It's going to move up the average. I prefer for people to look at the median. The other one that caught my attention was the number of active listings, just under 8,000 a year ago to over 10,000. That's a significant increase of almost 30%, mm-hmm. which could be keeping that the price level sort of. I tell people right now it's negotiable. You can negotiate. It depends on the listing, but there'll be listings that are really, if they're priced right, and they've got they're pretty. They've got the improvements. They're updated. They've been renovated, or they've been well kept. They're still going to sell at asking price and sometimes even above. But you get a listing.
That's always going to, if you got the house priced right, it's always going to sell in multiple offers.
Yeah, and now the other side, if you have a home that needs work, it's obvious. You come in as a buyer, and right away, I'm going to have to do this, bring in some paint. People start adding their number, like how much is going to cost me, and then that's where that listing is going to be sitting there for a while. So you see, now we do see an increase here in days in MLS from 39, that was November 2023, now 47. So that's in my world, that's a significant increase.
For sure.
So that's just kind of what we're kind of seeing. But
now you've been in the business for a while now. Is that looking like more of a? Is it returning to more of a stabilized? When you're talking about the days on market and the number of sales and the number of listings, is that looking to be more balanced, or is it for you? Are you thinking that it's just not normal?
No, so I think in the industry, we say this is more normal.
Yeah.
But in the consumer world, this is not normal.
Correct.
Because they very, very accustomed in the last few years of seeing those high appreciation figures and seeing those bidding wars and seeing those much lower interest rates, which were not normal.
Yep.
And now we're like in the 6 to 7 is what they've been, Even when it dipped in September, it still didn't go below. There was exceptions here and there, depending on the individual. But it's, to me, I think that's a word that we've used a lot, is stability or normal, if anything.
What's normal anymore? Let me ask you this. Did you find, especially this last half of the year, because I felt this, I found it to be like this, especially this last, even the 3 quarters of this year, where it felt like sellers thought it was 2021, right? These skyrocketing sales, and buyers were thinking that it was 2008.
Right. I think I think that made a significant, I think that's kind of almost hitting it on the nail as far as the consumer attitude, both on the buy side and the seller side, and how they were off. And I think that contributed. Yeah, I think that contributed a lot to the decrease in sales this year, the decrease in activity, and a lot of the who's going to budget, who's going to move first, right?
Yeah.
We're waiting for the seller to lower the price, and sellers waiting for the buyers to just everybody jump the fence, and everybody at one time sort of be like on Black Friday, where everybody's and I used to be the situation with Black Fridays. Now not as much with all the cyber, sale, online sales. But but I think that was what people thought, and so it's like, and then where's the agent fall in between? You're like pulling on one side and pulling on this side, and you're like, there's still a gap.
Yeah.
But I think moving on to 2025, I think that gap will reduce.
Yeah, I'm already feeling that. I'm already seeing that activity is up on the buy side. Well, we see the listings are going up. We got listings going up as well. If we were to look at November Minnesota market year over year, November year over year, I mean, we did have 5,100 closed sales. And, speaking to the agents, something, especially the ones that have been getting beat up all year long, something I want you to think about, or a way to look at it is, if you got 5,100 closed sales in 1 month, there's a buy side and a sell side. So that's two transactions. That's two sides, right? One transaction, two sides. That was over 1,100, or that's 11,000 pieces of business.
Yeah.
And so almost 11,000 pieces of business. No, my math's on. Just over 10,000 pieces of business.
Yeah.
Somebody did that. Somebody did that work.
Mm-hmm.
And so those were closed in November because the work was done in January, in February. So the work that we're doing right now in October, November, December, it's going to show up. It's going to show up in January, February, and March.
Yeah. So, those are conversations I'm having right now with potential, like with prospect sellers that are looking to relocate. They're looking to, some of them have like investment properties that they're like looking at just getting rid of those.
Yeah.
And then I have there's just all sorts of different reasons why, but people are looking at right now and doing these kind of changes for next year. But, typically springtime, February, sometimes late February, definitely March, we see activity pick up.
Yeah.
But what will that mean for the buyer who's sitting on the fence because they want more inventory, but then you have more competition? And what does that mean for the seller to maybe work with a more serious buyer right now? Because they need to find a place than waiting, and they're like, well, I'm going to increase the price. But you may get more, I don't want to say flaky buyers, but people, okay, well, I got more options. Like, I don't want to.
Yeah, buyer strengths change. Yeah, each buyer strengths change. If you got somebody who's out shopping right now, especially at the end of the year, in the wintertime, right? For us, that's a big, we have a lot of seasonality here that's showing back up in Minnesota. If they're out and there's snow on the ground and it's 27 degrees, they're a serious buyer.
They're a serious buyer, right? Exactly.
So you can count on that. But who knows what's gonna happen? We never know. But everything's indicating to some consistency, some stabilization.
You brought up the closed listing. So we had an increase almost in November of like almost 30% more active listings than in 2023.
Yeah.
But just an increase in 10% of closed sales.
Yeah. I think folks are taking themselves, they're getting off the bench now. Folks are starting to take themselves off. And I don't blame them for waiting, man. It was, how can you predict, or how can you make a change, such a life event change, when you've got so much instability in the economy, in interest rates, in supply, then you had the election going on. Then you had the feds doing their thing. It was just such an unstable year. I mean, how many people really thought that they weren't even going to have a job, or that their job was going to go away? So I don't blame people for putting themselves on the bench. What I do know is that if buying is, if real estate, buying a house, selling a house is something you need to do, you and I, we're in the business not just because we're trying to capture a transaction, but we're actually interested in serving people. If it's that old adage there's a Chinese proverb that says, when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago and today, right? That's still something that can be related to real estate. If it's something you got to do it. But when you get asked, my answer when somebody asks me, so how's the market? Lots of times I say, well, it depends. Why are you asking? Because for everybody, I mean, the process is the same for almost everybody. 95% of the people go through the same process. But the reasons why are you asking? Why had somebody pass away? I have a new baby. I have a new job. I need to change my debt. I need to resize what it is that I have. All those things there. There's not a lot of people that are buying just because they don't like their house.
Right.
They're buying because they have to.
Mm-hmm.
So,
same thing on the selling side.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think, and if anything, sometimes that's a bigger situation of why selling.
Yeah.
I think that's a bigger shift. A lot of times, from buying to selling is renting, and the limits, especially like if you're in an apartment situation, or the density. There's other issues, but selling, you're I think more vested into your home. That's where you live. That's created a life there.
Yeah, 100%. So let me ask you this: as we wrap up and we start thinking about 2025, because I've got an answer for this. What's one area that you're going to focus on that maybe you hadn't focused on before for 2025?
As an agent?
Yeah. Yes.
Man, well, I have, if anything, well, that's a challenge for me in focusing. That word focusing is it's an issue for me because there's several.
Yeah.
On my end, one thing that I do believe in is just activity.
Yeah.
So I think open houses is a big one.
Why do you say that?
Because of the whole idea with a NAR settlement.
Yep.
And a lot of people not being as decisive about working with a particular agent.
Yeah.
They want to kind of test out the properties and want to see what's out there. And I think open houses provides that. So one thing I'm doing is working more with new builders to provide open houses for their listings.
Yeah.
I think that is one. I think more education.
I'm glad you said that. I'm seeing this in this market as well right now, especially after the NAR settlement, that open houses are the opportunities that buyers are taking to interview agents without having to go into a long-term commitment.
Right. So, and I've experienced that already this last couple months, and doing those. So I definitely want to build that on my end because of my involvement with the Colorado Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and other business organizations. I'm exploring more commercial opportunities, commercial real estate opportunities, both on the leasing and listing, buy and sell kind of areas. Because I think one, I get along really well with business owners, with entrepreneurs, people that see the challenges of. I guess it depends on how you see it. Like if you're unemployed every day, like you always have to be working for that next opportunity. Yeah. There's nothing that's given to you, and always have to market yourself.
Yeah.
Always look at finances, bottom line, time commitment. You explore all these things. So I have an affinity with working with that type of clientele.
Yeah.
And I think I enjoy that as well.
Yeah.
So those are things for me personally, just in my space of where I'm at. And then I think there's always things just kind of in the menu of items that always keep on activities that you never let go.
No, yeah. The consistency is what the key to success is. It's not It's not always the
Yeah,
shiny object. It's that
right.
consistent.
Well,
Yeah.
you tell me what what the crystal ball has in store for you.
Well, I'll tell you what, one of the initiatives that I'm taking this year that I haven't put I've always worked with first-time home buyers. I think we've always done a really good job working with first-time home buyers. But there was something, and I know the power of home buying, but there was something that I came across 2 weeks ago that had me, it had me apologizing. And what I mean by that is I've always known the power of homeownership, it being the cornerstone of generational wealth, right? We've always served I think about 30% of our business. If I were to
Hmm.
look at our numbers, 30 to 33% of our business is with first-time home buyers.
Yeah.
Love that space, love building that dream, things like that. Um, Knew the power of it. When you look at home ownership versus, person's net worth of home ownership, versus the person's net worth as a rentor, depending on the demographic, it's 35, 40% or 40 times higher, right? If you've got the general public, the average homeowner is going to have a net worth north of 600,000 versus the average renter is maybe 4,500,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So I always knew the power of that. But what I didn't realize until a couple of weeks ago when the report came out that the average age of the new average age of the first time home buyers 38
Went
years
up.
old.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
highest
Significantly
it's
went up.
ever been.
Yeah.
And so if you're not buying a house until you're 40, the amount of equity that you're going to be able to
Just
build is going to be
reduce.
drastically reduced.
Hmm.
Because if you're 40, you might buy two houses, right? You
Hmm.
buy one, you let the equity build, you use that, leverage it to buy the next one, but you might only in your time be able to buy two houses. But
Yeah.
if you're 30, you might be able to buy three or four. If you're buying in your 20s, the numbers can actually go up to five, 4 to 7, right? Because you have that time to be able to build that equity and then be able to leverage that.
Yeah.
And when I heard that number at 38 average age of the first time home buyer, the average age of the home buyer right now is 56, both of them all-time highs.
Yeah.
And so my initiative this year, coming up in 2025, is to have a higher focus for first-time home buyers. Get first-time home buyers in as soon as we can.
Hmm.
Uh, Rates are stabilizing for the moment, right? Rates are
Hmm.
stabilizing and they're predicted to continue to stabilize in the sixes. Listings are up, so there's more options for first-time home buyers, and the price increases are showing, depending on who you
Yeah.
ask, um, low single digits, depending on your
Yeah.
market. So
So
all of those are a combination. That's a good combination for first-time home buyers to find some
so
stability.
there's two things I'm getting from that. One of them just I was going to tell you about, but as an agent or professional, and you see that statistics, you can say, well, hey, I'm just going to focus on the 40-year-olds because that's where they're at. Or you can take the challenge and say, no, 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 let's change that narrative and
Yeah,
let's go after the younger ones
correct.
so that they don't fall into this, into what's happening,
They get a
right?
chance. There's
There's
a
something going on,
chance.
right? So
Yep.
that's one thing that I'm taking, from that. Then when I was just looking up, like we talked about, like entry level um, prices in the Denver metro area right now, as of today, there are under $400,000 properties that are at least 3 bedroom, 1 bath homes with 1,200 square feet, single family residence, so not condos or townhomes.
Yeah.
There's 36 listings that fit that description.
Yeah. It's tough.
This is the entire Denver metro area. So just to give you an idea, kind of where they're at, and I've done this over the years, and I remember seeing a couple of years ago, there was less than 10
Yeah.
under 400,000.
Wow. Yeah, I believe it. I believe it 100%.
So it's actually more options right now than there were a few years ago,
Yeah.
believe it or not. But, I think it's always good to have that information out there, and I think from all sides. Obviously, I think we have to, as professionals providing services, we need to have this information. But I think we also need to relay that to the consumer. And if somebody out there listening, and by the way, if you like this content, we'll share our respective social media so you can follow, like, and share.
Yeah.
That you also stay informed as a consumer.
Yeah.
It's like you always become an expert. It's kind of, and I always, because we do the same thing. You start shopping for a car.
Yep.
All of a sudden, you start knowing horsepowers and credits and all sorts of things that you would have no idea otherwise. Because you start seeing that same brand like everywhere you go. That's what you're looking at. I think that's what you want to do if you become active and you start looking at the opportunity to sell or to buy. And if you're looking to buy, well, you want to get a list and start getting data so that when the point is, you want to get preparing so that you make that decision and you feel better about making that decision rather than feeling stressed and uninformed about it. But then there's fear. Anytime, to me, the fear is just not having information. It's the lack of information, right?
So with that said, mi familia, mis amigos, if they've got some real estate interests or they're moving to Denver, what's your phone number?
So my phone number is 720-724-8187, and we'll put on the screen. Familia, conocidos, my Denverites and Coloradans and elsewhere for that matter. Okay, you're looking at checking out Minnesota and what's it, the land of the 1,000 lakes or
10,000 lakes?
10,000. I was shortchanging you guys. Isaac, we're out there, man. Lifetime, literally in Saint Paul. What's your information?
651-387-6317. You can Google Isaac Contreras Realtor, Isaac Contreras Real Estate Agent. I'll pop up on the first 5 pages.
Isaac, it's been a treat. Thanks for sharing this space with me, and I hope we do it again some other time.
Roger that.
Enjoy the holidays and the New Year's.
You too, man.
Stay safe. Adios.